Hello and welcome to the No More Trauma podcast. My name is Tanya. I am a trauma survivor, coach, wellness facilitator, and yoga teacher. My mission in bringing this podcast is to offer inspiration, healing, and mental health tips on how to live a healthy lifestyle after trauma. In today's episode, we are discussing anger, healing anger or rage post trauma. Okay, so anger is a common emotion that can be misunderstood for a deeper emotion, right? So unsettled anger is a trauma response that can unfold into addiction, self-harm, abuse, unhealthy impulsivity, manipulation, even have the need to seek injustice. Okay, so alternatively, anger can actually it can become a healthy emotion once we begin to explore our inner dynamic and link other possible emotions from unresolved experiences or trauma. Okay, so anger and rage can also be a healthy emotion, again, when we learn what it is that we truly need. Okay, so expressing it in a healthy way to help resolve conflict and how to transform it into love or creation. Okay, so once we figure that out, then we can begin to work with the anger. So first thing is, what is anger, right? So anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong. So this particular definition is from the American Psychological Association. And so it's, when we think about anger, it's deep disappointment or upset or irritability. So now that we know the definition, right, we know what anger is, and maybe that's our go-to. I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, because that's also the response when we're met with anger. So when we look at the emotions, right, when we go dig just a little bit deeper to see how can we work with anger. So what do I feel? So I want you to take a moment to maybe think about a time, maybe it's just recent or maybe a couple years back, where you were met with this sense of rage, right? This sense of complete and utter disappointment. Maybe underneath that rage or that anger, right? Because anger gets a bad rep. We look at it and we say, gosh, they're so angry. Or we look at the word anger as such a negative emotion. And I have to be honest, I was one of those individuals. And I saw it as such a negative space to be in. And so when we look at anger, we see that the emotions associated with it can be feelings of feeling powerless, feeling helpless. And maybe there's a feeling of disgust, maybe frustration. Maybe you're feeling extremely frustrated with someone or something. Maybe during that time there was a lot of fear, right? And so you were needing to feel in control of that situation or that person. Maybe there was deep rooted pain. Maybe a sense of betrayal. Someone betrayed the trust, right? Betrayed your your physical space. Irritability. Yeah. Maybe getting a grade back from an exam and you're just like, I studied my butt off. How on earth did I get a D? Right. And so maybe there's jealousy. Someone got the position that you were applying for and you're angry. You worked your butt off. Maybe there's shame, right? Shame around, and this is me just exploring different scenarios here, but maybe there's shame in the, I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, maybe the work that you do. Maybe there's shame there, and so when you have, say higher standards of your work or just a different vision of your work, and so now you're met with shame and this makes you angry. Guilt. Maybe there's guilt, maybe there's embarrassment, vengeful, you feel as though, I need to get back at that person for how they betrayed me. Or maybe deep-rooted anxiety. So back in 2018, so back in 2018, I will not say the company's name because they are a pretty well-known company and they're across the U.S. And so I needed to go into the facility. It is a wellness space. I needed to go into the facility and change my method of payment. And so as I had come back from my meditation facility, I decided, on the way home that I would stop at this wellness space, update my payment method, and reschedule an appointment. And so when I went into the facility, there were individuals in the waiting area, and there were 2 people ahead of me. And so the gentleman that worked in the facility was on the phone, and he was on the phone with another client. And I guess the client had questions in regards to their contract, and the way that conversation went, how he ended that conversation with that client, it already made me anxious. I had already started to say, okay, I'm a person, when I handle any type of transaction, I like to, just be a little private. I'm a little reserved. I like to, I don't like to, let everyone hear what I'm doing. I'm very private in that way. When I'm handling any sort of transactions or dealing with contracts, legalities, anything like that. So, as I see, as he hung up the phone, he says, well, I have individuals in front of me. You need to read the agreement. And he did, hung up the phone. And so when I can see, the individuals in front of me handling what they needed to handle in regards to the promotion that was active at that time. And so the next person in front of me, handled their transaction. And so we were in a really small space, and I, again, I'm one of those people, I like to, just handle it in a very, just a private way, and there was really no space for that type of privacy. And can I just say, can we normalize that? I see when a lot of transactions are taking place in different spaces, everything's so loud. And maybe that's just me. Anywho, and so, I had just come, experience one particular trauma that was just I was already just navigating that in my body and processing what I had just experienced. And so here I am in a wellness space, and I'm saying, this is, I'm in a good space. This should be, I should be not catered to, but I should be safe, right? I should feel safe in this wellness space. I should feel as though I am caring for my body, and this should go over smoothly. And so, as I get to the counter, and he greeted me. He said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "If you don't mind, can you lower your voice?" And so immediately, his response, he looked at me, he looked at my hand, because I had the card and my method of payment, which was a credit card in my hand. And he looked at me. And so you're actually going to as I'm telling this story, I'm just noticing you're going to hear how I handle anger as well as the gentleman. So he looks at me. He says, "Excuse me?" I said, "If you don't mind, can you lower your voice? I just like to do this in private. I don't want everyone to hear what I'm doing." And he says, "How dare you speak to me that way?" And so immediately, trauma response, fight, flight, fawn, freeze. So immediately I can sense conflict. And so in the way that I have dealt with anger, I freeze. That's the first step for me. And he says, what has given you the right to come here and to speak to me in the way that you do? And he says, "Who the hell are you?" And it gets escalated from there. I said, "Excuse me, all I needed to do is change my method of payments." And he says to me, "This is and excuse me if you have any kids listening, this is my effing practice. And you will never speak to me in the way that you do. Get thee out of my office." And so a lot of things was happening for me. And, as we go into this session podcast, so if you're listening, I like to call these sessions if you're a returning listener, and thank you for returning. So I wanted to, as I'm looking back, and I'm asking myself, how do I deal with anger? I freeze, right? And, how was anger showed up, how was anger demonstrated for me, growing up and, through different experiences. For me, when met with conflict, I would hold and suppress whatever it was that I was feeling, right? So now my body is holding on to emotions, right? Anger was something that I could not express, whether it be through relationships, in the workplace. That happens, right? I want you to think about that. Think about the time where you were in the workplace and you couldn't really express emotion, especially anyone who is listening that is a person of color, right? That stereotype of being angry. And so as I was holding on to what it was that I was feeling, I noticed even in conflict, flight was always the next movement for me, the next response for me. I don't want to cause trouble, right? I'm angry. I'm going to hold my emotions. I'm not being heard, nor am I seen. I'm also a person of color. And so let me remove myself. Okay? And if anyone's listening, if this story has stimulated, activated anything, I want you to notice your breath. Take a moment, inhale. Exhale, let it go. Again, making sure that you can take a sip of water and just notice where you are right now. Know that you're safe. You're just listening to this unfolding, right? So as we get deeper into this conflict, I said, excuse me, all I wanted to do is change my method of payment. And he says, he pulls up my information and he says, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cancel your contract and you can get out of here. I don't ever want to see your face in this place, in my office. And so as he says that, a woman comes out and she calls my name. He says, I'm not through with her. And it really upset me that there were clients in the waiting area and no one said anything. No one that was standing next to me said anything. The woman didn't say anything. And in that moment, I didn't feel safe, not only in my body, but in the environment, okay? And this is me still trying to understand that I'm angry. And so it escalates further, and he says, I'm calling the police. Please leave. And so he reaches for the phone. Not only did he change my payment method and hands me my card, he reaches for the phone. And so at this moment, now I'm even more fearful because I'm saying in my mind, well, now being a person of color, and here I am, and the owner is not, and who knows what will happen when the police gets here and if I would still be alive. So there's all this fear, right? Because we just went into the emotions. There's powerless, feelings of being powerless, feelings of, helpless. I'm frustrated. There's fear, right? Shame, what I look like, being a woman. I'm embarrassed. And I'm extremely anxious. So as I walk out of the facility, he continues to follow me out the door. And he says, get out of here, you B-word. So as I sit in the car, and I'm shaking at this point, and my idea was like, get out of the parking lot, the police are on their way. And I'm saying, what? And for some reason, so I brain fog, and so finally I said, call corporate. Well, I called another facility, another franchise location, and I said, excuse me, I need to report an incident. And she was very kind. She said, I cannot believe that has been your experience. And so I'm going to follow up with someone and see if they can follow up with you. Okay. So I'll pause here in this story and I'll circle back, but I want you to really examine this story, right? Notice the trauma response, notice how it was handled, going back to your experience of anger, rage, post trauma, right? How is that still showing up for you today, right? Think about the experiences in which you are met with and how that is showing up for you today. And so I'll go into this quote by my all-time favorite, Gary Zukav. I've talked about this book so much. It is my Bible. I like to call it my Bible, my manual, for even when teaching yoga. When I teach on the mat, this book has definitely been a lifesaver. I've learned a lot of wisdom, and there's a chapter in here called Anger, and I'll read something a little later into this podcast. So the heart of the soul, emotional awareness. And so his quotes, your anger is a clear, unmistakable signal that you are in pain, right? So going back, thinking about the moments that you have experienced some deep pain, extreme anger. Think about the emotions that were hiding beneath that. And Gary Zukav, he expresses it in form of in a diagram that it's like a mountain, right? So, or a volcano. So the eruption, that's the rage, that's the anger, the lava. And so underneath that is pain, underneath that is fear, underneath that are the possible emotions that I did describe. So examples of why we feel angry, right? I did not get what I needed, maybe from my parents during my childhood, and this makes me feel worthless, okay? Listen to those feeling emotions, right? Not just covering it up with anger. So maybe we have unresolved jealousy from a sibling or a friend in their achievements. Maybe my efforts and hard work is overlooked in my current work, right? So maybe my boss doesn't celebrate my attention to detail. This makes me feel used. Again, notice your breath. Notice if you're clenching your jaw or tightening your fist as you listen to this. Okay. Maybe my friends don't include me in exciting trips and excursions, which makes me feel left out. Maybe my partner or spouse treats me poorly and decided to step outside of our relationship, right? And this makes me feel betrayed and exploited of my boundaries. Take a breath, inhale. Exhale, let it go. Maybe someone skipped me in line and brought up experiences of being bullied in grade school. This makes me feel powerless, embarrassed, or unsafe. Maybe my phone call or text message wasn't answered and it stimulated feelings of neglect, frustration, and anxiety. Take a moment to breathe. Inhale. Exhale, let it go. Gary Zukov also states that anger is the agony of believing that you are not capable of being understood and that you are not worthy of being understood. An individual who is continually angry is in continual pain and suffering. So I'll take a moment to pause here and just, I want to talk about our lovely sponsors for this podcast, and I think it's right on time and in alignment. Magic Mind, right? So Magic Mind, the founder, James Bashara, he decided, the wisdom that he has, he decided to create a beautiful herbal supplement and powder of Magic Mind. And these are 2-ounce herbal supplements, and they have really good ingredients that supports many things like stress and anxiety, energy, right? One of the key ingredients, the reason why I enjoy this so much, and I talk about having the importance of, balancing our mood, right? The importance of doing that and creating healthy practices or having a healthy diet. So these 2-ounce elixirs, I've decided to incorporate that in my practice. So if you already have like your morning smoothie or latte, you don't necessarily have to replace it, but you can incorporate this 2-ounce elixir with it, right? So really allowing to balance out the body. So there's honey. Who doesn't love honey, right? So there's honey, which is a natural sweetener, and it also makes us feel good. It really supports that area, and adaptogens that can also support the relaxation, right? I love on the bottle it says do more, stress less. So this is something that I really, really, really enjoy, and I invite you to also visit the website, and that's magicmind.co and / N like no, M like more, T like trauma. Okay. I'm also it's the month of No More Trauma's anniversary, and so with that, I am also providing you with a promo code. So you can either subscribe to their elixirs or powder, or you can, purchase a big box, which has, I believe, more than 12. I think it has about 18 of the 2-ounce elixirs. So you can just toss it in your bag. It's really convenient if you're on the go. I, like to take these right before my yoga practice. But the promo code is N like no, M like Mary, more, and T like trauma. So no more trauma 20 to get 20% off. So I invite you to visit the website and take a look and find something that helps support your mood, balance you out, and incorporate this into your morning practice. So again, magicmind.co. And I'd like to thank you, Magic Mind, for sponsoring this episode. Excuse me. All right, so kind of going back to the story, oh goodness, what a story. So I know you're probably saying the same thing. Wow, what a story. So in this experience, the manager calls me back and he says, we had cameras and we saw the whole thing. We heard the whole thing, except the ending part where he had something lovely to call me besides my name. And he says, first off, it's not his practice. This person is just an assistant. And we saw signs. That part is, I think about, something that angers me are the injustices, in the mass shootings that we are witnessing. And a common phrase is we saw signs. That's another podcast session. And, witnessing and seeing the signs and not doing anything. So, but anyway, he says, I will offer you free services. And I remember in that moment, I didn't really know the right thing to do. I was still stuck, paralyzed in the trauma experience, and within my anger. And I said no, thank you. I just would like a refund all, credit me all of my services and cancel my contract. And I neglected to say that not only did the individual in this space threaten to cancel my contract, he called me and left a voicemail, which I thought was interesting. So, there are a lot of different ways how I could have handled that. But again, in that trauma response and, trying to process my anger and really pick those pieces apart. So if you, go back and you think about your experiences, maybe thinking about how you may have handled the experience, your trauma experience, because fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fight is the anger, the trauma response, okay? Anger, rage is also a trauma response, okay? And so I want you to take a moment to self-examine, right? And really look at potential ways that I may express anger in an unhealthy way. Because in all reality, that was an unhealthy way that I processed my anger. I was holding on, right? I wasn't fully expressing myself, and, I left the scene. So think about, do I indulge in tension within my body, right? Do I ball my fists? Do I raise my shoulders? Do I clench my jaw? Do I grind my teeth throughout the day or at night? Do I shut down and withhold love from my loved ones when I'm upset or angry? Do I punch or throw things? Do I cause physical harm to myself or others? Do I name call? Right? So if we look at how the gentleman was the associate in the wellness space, how he handled anger, we can definitely say that there was some name calling, right? Raised voice. Do I bully? There was some bullying there. Do I project? Do I name call or feel the need to seek revenge or injustice? Do I feel the need to control others around me? Let's take a moment to just notice, and notice your breath. Notice the sensations in the body. So once we're able to identify how we may express anger or rage or upset in an unhealthy way, how can I heal myself, nurture myself, and heal my anger? Maybe exploring the inner dialogue, right? What is this inner talk that I'm having with myself first? Excuse me. I have the hiccups. Excuse me. And determine if you're, suppressing or hiding your anger or frustration. And maybe you ask yourself, how did I express anger growing up, right? So in this space of healing, it's about kind of processing and really picking it apart, starting to go within and name what's happening and figure out how this has developed, right? How has this manifested around you? How has it been demonstrated around you? That's the first step to nurturing, is being able to identify and pick it apart a bit. Was anger considered a bad emotion? Was I told I wasn't able to express my anger? That anger was a bad emotion and that I couldn't possess it? And is this my go-to when expressing? Right? So I believe the first step is really journaling and processing the anger and, deciphering what it is that we're experiencing beneath that and working with that new emotion, right? Once we give it a name, maybe it's jealousy, then maybe I can start articulating that to the maybe people involved, right? Maybe there's frustration with not being able to process something. And this is where I say, working with a professional to help support that. And telling yourself that it's a healthy emotion. Anger is a healthy emotion in that it can allow for conflict resolution. It can open up for new ideas and creativity, right? So this is where we start to get into now that I know what I'm feeling, right? Now there's space. Now there's room, right? Because when there's anger, we put a wall up. When there's anger does not see nor hear. So when we think about the story that I shared, the gentleman could not hear or see me. His mission was to seek injustice or revenge, or to make me feel small, whatever that looked like. And so had he asked, what is it about maybe the level or tone of my voice makes you feel uncomfortable, or what can I do for you, or hey, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. What needs to happen here? What is your mission in coming in today? Okay. So how we can transmute anger and use it in a healthy way that works for ourselves and others around us, right? Because Also notice if your anger distances you from others around you, right? From your loved ones, from your, potential friends, from your family members, right? Your spouse or partner, your coworkers, okay? And so articulate your boundaries in a healthy way, right? Maybe had he said, hey, I would love to, I don't mind lowering my voice, but I also need you to do X, Y, and Z. Is that possible? Can we agree to that? Right? Whatever that is, that's just me taking a wild guess at, how it could have been handled for him. So determine the underlying emotion behind your anger, right? So we're still in that space of how we can heal and nurture the anger, journaling our thoughts, right? So like the questions above that I mentioned. And so maybe going for a walk, taking a moment. Let me take a moment, let me pause, right? Maybe he could have said, you know what? I'll give you a moment as you review the contract. Let me step away and handle these other clients that are waiting. Maybe phoning a friend, a relative, or a support group. Of course, therapy. And then problem solving activities, games, and puzzles. So as you're, maybe this is a task for you and you're still working with it. And I would suggest in the mornings, maybe working on a puzzle, crossword puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. There's some problem solving in there, right? And that can support maybe the frustration, right? Your needs not getting met, right? So maybe working some math problems, accessing the other neurotransmitters in the brain, right? When we do that. Games, maybe tapping into those joyful experiences. So I invite you to take a moment with this and really journal the questions that, that are asked within this session. So anger can be misunderstood. It's a misunderstood emotion. If we don't examine what's happening underneath, anger can take us away from the potential of resolving conflict, understanding, and the thing that we love so much, love, right? We all love that feeling. And so, and maybe not, maybe I will not say that because there are individuals who struggle with love and don't necessarily like the way that they're still working with that feeling sensation, right? Understanding and knowing that it's okay. So I won't say everyone. Some individuals are still working on accepting love, right? But it allows space for understanding, right? And so anger can be a blaring red flag that your wounds are not yet healed. This trauma response can inspire us to reach deeper within ourselves for understanding and what we're in search of. Heal open and tender wounds and strengthen connections with ourselves and for the ones around us. I thank you so much for listening in on this session. I hope something did actually come up for you and something that you can work with, or a discussion can happen. If you're listening to this episode either on SoundCloud or YouTube, I invite you to start a discussion below in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say either about the story or how you're working with anger. I will also include for those who can't meet me in the studio, I will actually post the link below where you can work on this anger, right, through movement with a yin practice. So I'm now bringing those episodes here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple or SoundCloud, I invite you to, take a, tune in on YouTube or subscribe or share this with someone who can benefit. I would love to have you here, and you're welcome here, right? We're all going through this together, this life together post trauma. And so this is a place where we support each other. So I invite you back. I thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself. And I ask that you live abundantly, love your authenticity, and radiate organic happiness. But most importantly, live a life of no more trauma. And namaste, trauma free. See you back in the next session. Bye.